The distress call. In the farthest reaches of the Andromeda galaxy, the Zetharians clung to life on their crumbling space station. This once proud race, known for their advanced crystalline technology, now found themselves on the brink of extinction. High Counselor Xyloth stared out at the chaotic maelstrom of energy swirling around their station. The nearby binary star system had become dangerously unstable, bombarding their station with deadly radiation and gravitational fluctuations. Despite their best efforts, the Zetharian shields were failing, their life support systems pushed to the limit. Xyloth turned to face the remaining members of the High Council, his crystalline features etched with worry. "Our situation grows more dire by the moment," he said, his voice resonating through the chamber. "We have no choice but to send out a distress signal." Murmurs of despair echoed through the room. "But who will come to our aid?" Counselor Virex asked, her iridescent eyes flickering with doubt. "We are on the edge of known space, and our technology far surpasses most races." Xyloth's gaze remained resolute. "We must have faith that there are those who will answer our call, no matter the danger." With a wave of his slender, crystalline hand, Xyloth activated the distress beacon. A pulsing signal, imbued with the essence of their race, spread out into the cosmos, carrying their plea for help. As the signal propagated through space, the Zetharians huddled together, their crystalline structures humming with a mixture of hope and fear. They had no way of knowing who, if anyone, would respond to their desperate cry for aid. Light years away on the rugged, heavily armored rescue ship TSS Indomitable, a human crew went about their duties, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. The ship's sturdy frame, built to withstand the harshest of conditions, housed a team of the most skilled and daring individuals Earth had to offer. Captain Nora Vance, her short, jet-black hair contrasting sharply with her piercing blue eyes, sat in her command chair, reviewing the ship's systems. As a veteran of countless rescue missions, she had seen her fair share of danger, but nothing could have prepared her for the challenge that lay ahead. Suddenly, the communication console lit up, a strange, pulsing signal filling the bridge. Lieutenant Mikhail Zhukov, the ship's communications officer, furrowed his brow as he worked to decipher the message. "Captain," Zhukov called out, his voice filled with urgency. "We're receiving a distress signal from an unknown race. They call themselves the Zetharians." Vance's eyes narrowed as she absorbed the information. "Zetharians? I've never heard of them. What's their situation?" Zhukov's face grew grim as he read the details of the signal. "They're trapped on a failing space station near a highly unstable binary star system. Their shields are collapsing, and they're running out of time." The bridge fell silent as the crew contemplated the magnitude of the situation. They were no strangers to danger, but this mission seemed to push the limits of even their capabilities. Vance stood, her presence commanding the attention of the entire bridge crew. "We didn't become the best rescue team in the galaxy by shying away from a challenge," she said, her voice filled with determination. "The Zetharians need our help, and we're going to give it to them. Set a course for their location, maximum speed." As the TSS Indomitable surged forward, racing towards the distant distress signal, the crew prepared themselves for the trials ahead. Little did they know that this mission would not only test their skills and courage, but also force them to confront the very limits of their humanity. The Deathworlders respond. As the TSS Indomitable hurtled through the void of space, Captain Nora Vance studied the holographic display of the Zetharians' star system. The binary stars pulsed with an angry, chaotic energy, their gravitational forces threatening to tear the region apart. "What have we gotten ourselves into?" muttered Lieutenant Commander Ilara Rains, the ship's second-in-command. Her green eyes reflected the eerie glow of the hologram. Vance glanced at her colleague, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "Nothing we can't handle. We're Deathworlders, remember." The term Deathworlder had been coined by the Galactic community to describe the hardy, resilient humans who hailed from Earth, a planet notorious for its extreme conditions and dangerous fauna. Where other races saw adversity, humans saw opportunity, thriving in environments that would crush most sentient beings. Rains chuckled, shaking her head. Sometimes I think the universe is trying to test just how much we can take, and we keep passing those tests. Vance replied, her gaze returning to the hologram. This time will be no different. As the ship drew closer to the Zetharian system, the crew prepared for the challenges ahead. In the engineering bay, Chief Engineer Marcus Klein and his team worked tirelessly to reinforce the ship's already formidable shields and structural integrity. "We'll need every bit of protection we can muster," Klein said, his bald head glistening with sweat as he welded a reinforcing plate to the ship's hull. "Those binary stars are going to hit us with everything they've got." In the medical bay, Dr. Samir Patel, the ship's chief medical officer, prepared his team for the potential casualties they might face. His dark eyes held a glimmer of concern as he reviewed the limited information they had on Zetharian physiology. "Their crystalline structure is unlike anything I've seen before," Patel mused, scrolling through the data on his holopad. "We'll need to be ready to adapt our treatments on the fly." As the TSS Indomitable entered the outer reaches of the star system, the ship's sensors were assaulted by a barrage of radiation and gravitational anomalies. On the bridge, the crew worked frantically to keep the ship on course, their fingers flying over the control panels. "Shields holding at 80%, reported Lieutenant Mikhail Zhukov, his brow furrowed in concentration. "But the gravitational fluctuations are getting stronger." Vance gripped the armrests of her command chair, her jaw set with determination. "Keep us steady, Zhukov. We're not turning back now." Deeper into the system they pressed, the ship's engines straining against the chaotic forces that sought to tear them apart. The viewport was filled with a swirling maelstrom of energy, the binary stars casting an eerie, pulsing light across the bridge. Suddenly, a massive solar flare erupted from one of the stars, engulfing the TSS Indomitable in a wave of searing plasma. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring across every deck. "Shields down to 50%. Zhukov shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of warning klaxons. Vance's eyes blazed with a fierce determination as she punched the intercom. "Klein, we need those shields back up now." In engineering, Klein and his team worked frantically, rerouting power and reinforcing the shield generators. Sparks flew as they pushed the ship's systems to their limits, fighting against the relentless onslaught of the binary stars. Just as it seemed the ship could take no more, the solar flare dissipated, leaving the TSS Indomitable battered but unbroken. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the ship as the crew took stock of their situation. "Shields stabilizing at 60%, Zhukov reported, a hint of awe in his voice. "We made it through." Vance allowed herself a brief moment of respite before turning her attention to the view screen. In the distance, the Zetharian space station hung like a fragile crystalline ornament, its surface marred by the scars of the relentless stellar assault. "There it is," she breathed, a mix of anticipation and trepidation washing over her. "Let's just hope we're not too late." As the TSS Indomitable closed in on the failing station, the crew steeled themselves for the daring rescue that lay ahead. They had come this far, defying the varied forces of nature itself, but the true test of their mettle was yet to come. Entering the storm, the TSS Indomitable approached the crumbling Zetharian space station, the chaos of the binary star system casting an eerie, pulsing light across its crystalline surface. Captain Nora Vance stood on the bridge, her eyes locked on the view screen, a mixture of determination and apprehension etched on her face. "Scan for life signs," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tense silence. Lieutenant Zhukov's fingers danced across the sensor controls, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm picking up multiple life signs, Captain, but they're weak and scattered throughout the station." Vance nodded, her mind racing with the challenges that lay ahead. "Rains, assemble a rescue team. We're going in." As the away team prepared to embark, Chief Engineer Klein's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, I've analyzed the station structure. It's highly unstable, and the docking bays are completely compromised. You'll have to find another way in. Vance's jaw tightened as she considered their options. Then we'll make our own way in. Klein, can you modify the ship's mining laser to cut through the station's hull? There was a brief pause before Klein responded, his voice tinged with a mix of excitement and trepidation. It's risky, but I think we can make it work. I'll need to calibrate the laser to account for the station's crystalline composition. Do it, Vance said, her tone leaving no room for doubt. We don't have time to waste. As Klein and his team set to work modifying the mining laser, Vance turned to Rains, who stood ready with a team of the ship's most skilled and daring crew members. You'll be entering uncharted territory, Vance said, her eyes locking with Rains. Stay alert and be prepared for anything. We have no idea what condition the Zetharians are in, or what other hazards you might face. Rains nodded, her green eyes blazing with determination. We'll bring them back, Captain, no matter what it takes. With the mining laser modified and the rescue team ready, the TSS Indomitable maneuvered into position above the Zetharian station. The ship's powerful thrusters held it steady against the chaotic gravitational forces that threatened to tear it apart. Firing mining laser, Klein reported, his voice tense with concentration. A brilliant beam of energy erupted from the ship's underside, striking the station's hull with surgical precision. The crystalline structure resisted at first, but slowly the laser began to cut through, creating an opening just large enough for the rescue team to enter. We're through, Klein exclaimed, a hint of pride in his voice. Vance wasted no time. Rains, you have the green light. Bring our people home. The rescue team, led by Rains, boarded a specially designed shuttle and launched from the TSS Indomitable's hangar bay. The small craft darted through the maelstrom of energy surrounding the station, its reinforced shields barely withstanding the onslaught. As they approached the opening in the station's hull, Rains couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the alien structure that loomed before them. The crystalline walls pulsed with an inner light, even as they were battered by the relentless forces of the binary stars. The shuttle slipped through the opening, its landing gear deploying as it touched down on the station's internal deck. Rains and her team quickly disembarked, their weapons at the ready, unsure of what they might face in the alien environment. The interior of the station was a maze of shimmering crystalline corridors, the walls humming with an eerie, almost melodic resonance. The air was thin and charged with energy, making the hair on the back of Rain's neck stand on end. Life signs are coming from the central chamber. Zhukov's voice crackled over the comm, guiding the team through the labyrinthine station. As they pressed deeper into the heart of the station, the rescue team couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The crystalline walls seemed to pulse with a strange alien intelligence, as if the very structure itself were alive. Suddenly, a scream echoed through the corridors, a sound of pure agony and despair. Rains and her team exchanged glances, their grips tightening on their weapons as they quickened their pace. They burst into the central chamber, a vast, cavernous space dominated by a towering, pulsing crystal at its center. Huddled around the base of the crystal were dozens of Zetharians, their crystalline forms cracked and dulled, their eyes filled with a desperate, pleading light. Rain stepped forward, her voice steady as she addressed the alien crowd. We are here to help. We're going to get you out of here. The Zetharians stirred, a ripple of hope passing through their ranks as they beheld their human saviors. But even as the rescue team began to guide the aliens towards the shuttle, a deep, rumbling tremor shook the station to its core. The station's collapsing. Zhukov's voice cried out over the comm. You need to get out of there. Now. Racing against time, Rains and her team herded the weakened Zetharians through the crumbling corridors, dodging falling debris and bursts of searing energy as the station tore itself apart around them. As they reached the shuttle, the last of the Zetharians stumbling aboard, Rains cast a final glance back at the alien structure that had nearly become their tomb. The once proud station was now a twisted, shattered ruin, its crystalline beauty lost to the unrelenting fury of the binary stars. With a heavy heart, Rains boarded the shuttle, the hatch sealing behind her as the small craft launched itself back into the maelstrom. The rescue team had achieved the impossible, but the true challenge was yet to come. As the shuttle docked with the TSS Indomitable, Captain Vance couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in her crew. They had risked everything to save an alien race they had never met, embodying the very best of what it meant to be human. But as she watched the Zetharians emerge from the shuttle, their crystalline forms battered and broken, she knew that their mission was far from over. The cultural divide between their two races yawned wide, and the scars of the Zetharians' ordeal ran deep. It would take more than a daring rescue to bridge the gap between their worlds. It would take understanding, compassion, and a willingness to learn from one another. And as the TSS Indomitable set course for the nearest starbase, Vance couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenges lay ahead. Part 4. The Daring Rescue. As the shuttle docked with the TSS Indomitable, the rescued Zetharians emerge, their crystalline forms battered and dim. Captain Nora Vance watched as her crew rushed to assist the alien survivors, a sense of pride mingling with concern in her heart. Dr. Samir Patel and his medical team quickly triaged the Zetharians, their faces etched with concentration as they worked to stabilize the weakened aliens. The Zetharians' crystalline physiology was unlike anything they had encountered before, and adapting their treatments proved to be a challenge. Among the survivors, one Zetharian stood out, a regal figure whose cracked and dulled exterior could not conceal the strength within. As Vance approached, the alien lifted its head, fixing her with a piercing gaze. "I am High Counselor Xyloth," the Zetharian said, its voice resonating with a strange melodic quality. "On behalf of my people, I thank you for your bravery and compassion." Vance inclined her head, feeling a strange mix of respect and curiosity. "We're here to help, High Counselor. Your distress call reached us, and we couldn't ignore it." Xyloth's crystalline features shifted, a gesture that Vance interpreted as a smile. "You are a remarkable species, Captain. To risk so much for a race you have never encountered before, it speaks volumes about your character." As the Zetharians were ushered to the TSS Indomitable's medical bay, Vance couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The rescue mission had been a success, but the challenges that lay ahead were daunting. Over the next few days, as the TSS Indomitable charted a course for the nearest star base, the human crew and their Zetharian passengers began the delicate process of cultural exchange. The differences between their two races were vast, and misunderstandings were frequent. Dr. Paddle found himself struggling to adapt his medical knowledge to the unique physiology of the Zetharians. Their crystalline structure was not only their physical form, but also the repository of their memories and emotions. Each crack, each dull patch, represented a trauma that went beyond the physical. In the ship's mess hall, crew members and Zetharians alike attempted to bridge the cultural divide through shared meals and halting conversations. The Zetharians were fascinated by the humans' resilience and adaptability, while the humans marveled at the aliens' advanced technology and ethereal beauty. Yet even as the two races began to find common ground, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Some of the human crew members, battle-hardened veterans of countless conflicts, found the Zetharians' pacifism and reliance on technology to be a weakness. The Zetharians, in turn, were appalled by the humans' casual acceptance of violence and their willingness to risk their lives for others. Amidst this uneasy alliance, Captain Vance found herself spending more and more time with High Counselor Xyloth. The alien leader possessed a wisdom and grace that belied its battered exterior, and Vance found herself drawn to its calm, thoughtful demeanor. As they conversed in the ship's observation lounge, watching the stars drift by, Xyloth shared the history of its people, a tale of a once great civilization brought low by the very technology they had relied upon. The Zetharians had retreated to the far reaches of space, seeking to rebuild and preserve what they could. Vance, in turn, spoke of Earth and the challenges that had shaped human history. She described the conflicts and catastrophes that had nearly torn her species apart, and the hard-won lessons that had allowed them to reach for the stars. Through their conversations, Vance and Xyloth began to see the potential for a deeper understanding between their two races. But even as they forged this fragile bond, a new threat was stirring in the depths of space. On the bridge of the TSS Indomitable, Lieutenant Zhukov frowned at his sensor readings. A strange energy signature had appeared on the edge of the ship's long-range scanners. A pulsing, writhing mass of dark matter that seemed to consume everything in its path. As Zhukov brought the anomaly to Captain Vance's attention, a chill ran down her spine. She had seen this phenomenon before, in the darkest corners of the galaxy, a rare and deadly force known as a nova storm. The nova storm, born from the collapse of ancient massive stars, was a swirling vortex of exotic particles and dark energy. It moved through space like a malevolent entity, devouring entire star systems and leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. Vance knew that the TSS Indomitable, even with its advanced technology and battle-hardened crew, stood little chance against the nova storm. Their only hope was to outrun it, a feat that would push the ship and its inhabitants to their very limits. As the captain convened an emergency meeting with her senior staff and the Zetharian leaders, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily upon them all. They were no longer just survivors or rescuers. They were a disparate group of beings, thrown together by fate, facing an existential threat that cared nothing for their differences. In the face of this new danger, the fragile alliance between human and Zetharian would be tested as never before. The skills and knowledge of both races would be called upon, and the very fabric of their understanding would be stretched to the breaking point. An uneasy alliance. As the nova storm loomed on the horizon, Captain Nora Vance found herself in a race against time. The TSS Indomitable, for all its advanced technology and hardy construction, was not designed to withstand the fury of such a cosmic phenomenon. On the bridge, the crew worked frantically to chart a course that would allow them to skirt the edge of the storm, desperately seeking a way to avoid its destructive path. But even as they pored over the sensor data and astronomical charts, a grim realization began to set in. There was no way around the storm. The only path to safety lay directly through its heart. Vance felt the weight of responsibility pressing down upon her as she convened an emergency meeting of her senior staff and the Zetharian leaders. The situation was dire, and the choices before them were few. As the humans and Zetharians gathered in the ship's conference room, the tension in the air was palpable. The two races, so different in their ways and understanding, now found themselves facing a common threat that cared nothing for their cultural differences. High Counselor Xyloth, its crystalline form still bearing the scars of its recent ordeal, spoke first. Captain Vance, your people have already done so much for us. We cannot ask you to risk your lives further on our behalf. Vance shook her head, her eyes blazing with determination. We're in this together, High Counselor. Your people are under our protection now, and we'll do whatever it takes to keep everyone on this ship safe. But even as she spoke the words, Vance knew that the challenge before them was unlike anything they had faced before. The Nova Storm was a force of nature, raw and primal, and their chances of surviving a direct encounter were slim at best. It was then that Dr. Samir Patel, the ship's chief medical officer, spoke up. Captain, the Zetharians' technology is far more advanced than our own. Perhaps if we work together, we can find a way to enhance the ship's shields and structural integrity. Xyloth's crystalline features shimmered with sudden understanding. Dr. Patel is correct. Our crystals, properly attuned, could potentially absorb and redirect the storm's energy, but the process would be dangerous, and there are no guarantees. Vance looked around the room, taking in the faces of her crew and the Zetharian leaders. Each one bore the marks of the challenges they had faced, the losses they had endured. And yet, in their eyes, she saw a flicker of hope, a determination to face the impossible odds before them. Then we work together, she said, her voice steady and resolute. We pool our knowledge, our resources, and our strength, and we face this storm as one. Over the next few hours, the TSS Indomitable became a hive of activity. Human engineers and Zatharian technicians worked side by side, racing to modify the ship's systems and integrate the alien crystals into its shield matrix. In the medical bay, Dr. Patel and his team labored to understand the intricacies of Zatharian physiology, seeking ways to bolster their resilience against the storm's ravages. The Zatharians, in turn, shared their knowledge of energy fields and harmonic resonance, guiding the humans in the delicate process of attuning the crystals. As the preparations continued, Captain Vance found herself working closely with High Counselor Xyloff. The two leaders, so different in their origins and outlooks, forged a bond of mutual respect and understanding. They spent long hours poring over the ship's schematics and sensor data, seeking any advantage they could find. And through it all, the Nova Storm grew ever closer, its swirling vortex of dark energy and exotic particles a looming presence on the long-range scanners. The crew of the TSS Indomitable, human and Zatharian alike, knew that they were racing against the clock, that every moment brought them closer to the ultimate test of their resolve. Finally, as the last modifications were completed and the ship's systems thrummed with newfound power, Captain Vance gave the order to set course for the heart of the storm. The bridge crew, their faces etched with a mix of determination and fear, took their stations, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As the TSS Indomitable plunged into the seething maelstrom of the Nova Storm, the ship shuddered and groaned, its reinforced hull straining against the titanic forces that sought to tear it apart. On the view screen, the swirling vortex of the storm filled the display, a kaleidoscope of dark colors and pulsing energy. The modified shields, infused with the power of the Zatharian crystals, flared to life, forming a shimmering barrier around the ship. The crystals pulsed and glowed, their harmonics resonating through the hull, seeking to match and counter the frequencies of the storm's destructive energy. For a moment, it seemed as though the ship would be overwhelmed, the shields buckling under the onslaught. But then, gradually, the harmonics began to stabilize, the crystals finding a resonance with the storm's energy. The ship steadied, the shuddering easing as it found a path through the chaos. On the bridge, Captain Vance and High Counselor Xyloff stood side by side, their eyes locked on the view screen. They watched as the storm's fury parted before them, the ship's passage leaving a wake of relative calm in the seething vortex. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to the power of unity and cooperation in the face of overwhelming adversity. The human crew and their Zatharian allies had achieved the impossible, forging a path through the heart of the Nova Storm. But even as they emerged from the maelstrom, battered but unbroken, a new challenge loomed before them. For the storm, in its primal fury, had awakened something ancient and terrible, a force that had lain dormant for eons. As the long-range sensors detected the approaching threat, Captain Vance and High Counselor Xyloff exchanged a glance of grim understanding. They had survived the Nova Storm, but the true test of their newfound alliance was yet to come.